about to have a very important conversation that's very critical to all of us, so pay attention. We're talking about a heavy metal that is said to be neurotoxin. Look, it reduces the IQ of children when mothers are exposed to it. I'm talking about lead exposure in ambient environment. We have friends from the EPA and the Accra School of Hygiene, Water and Environmental Engineer. So these two gentlemen are friends from the EPA. Lovely Sapon, Deputy Director, Environmental Protection Agency, and Peter Dinko. Okay, you are the tutor at the Accra School of Hygiene.
Yes.
And you're a Water and Environment Engineer.
Yes.
Good. So we'll get into this thing we call lead exposure shortly. But welcome to the studio, says.
Thank you.
Good to have you. And so what's lead exposure, first of all?
Okay, let me say good morning to your listeners. First, I would want to let us know what lead is, and then I would go to lead exposure.
Okay.
Lead, as you correctly said, is a heavy metal. It occurs as an ore, so it's in the environment.
Right.
It's normally, it's a naturally occurring element, and it's found in a number of applications because of its characteristics.
Okay.
It's malleable. It can be pulled into strings. It is heavy, dense, and all that. Because of these peculiar characteristics, it can be found in so many applications.
Okay.
One of the commonest applications you can find them in is in your car batteries,
Okay.
the wet batteries. You can find them as cartridges for shooting game.
Oh.
You can. It's used.
So when you shoot that current here,
You can find them in it if
Wow.
if the cartridge contains lead. It can also be found in paint if the paint is produced from lead, and it can at the X-ray room there. Lead is what is used to prevent the radiation from reaching the untargeted places.
Okay.
So it's found in a number of applications.
what about paints?
Paints sometimes contain lead. It's because the shiny color and the beautiful color that you find in the paint, especially oil paint, is from a lead compound. But as we go on, we'll explain what the interventions we have made regarding paint, so
Right.
that we'll know what we have done.
So
with
how
it.
do
But
we get exposed to lead?
That's what I was coming to.
Right.
So once the lead gets into once it gets into your system, these areas I've mentioned, like the lead paint, peeling paint. Once you're exposed to peeling paint and it gets into your system, or the environment, contaminated environment, you take a substance that is contaminated with lead, or the ambient air, if there are lead particles and you inhale. So either by inhalation or by ingestion, once it gets into your system, it can be accumulated and will be gradually released to cause harm to your system.
So how does lead poisoning happen? At what point do we say there's lead poisoning?
Okay.
You want him to go on mine?
Any of you, actually.
So let him take it.
All right. So because of the bioaccumulative property of lead, when it gets into your body, it does not get excreted easily.
Okay.
So what happens is that whatever you eat, it accumulates. It keeps accumulating in your body, and there is no acceptable level of lead. There is no permissible level. Lead at the smallest level is still harmful.
It's destructive.
Yes. So when you take it, it accumulates in your system, and then as you keep taking it, it keeps accumulating. Like it has a bioaccumulative property. So for example, if a fish has taken, let's say, 10 molecules of lead, a smaller fish, in the lifetime of that fish, it takes like 100 molecules of that lead. A bigger fish swallows the big fish. That is 100 molecules. So in the lifetime of the bigger fish, it also takes, let's say, 1,000 fishes. That would be like 100,000 molecules.
Wow.
Then the human being takes one of that fish.
Wow.
You can imagine the molecules of lead
I see.
that has been consumed at the time.
A bit more on that also.
Yes, so that's exactly what you have said. So because it biomagnifies, once you are a bigger organisms and you take a lot more of the smaller organism which is exposed to lead, the level will be higher in you.
Right.
But as you said, you were asking about poisoning.
Yeah.
Once it gets into your system and it begins to affect you negatively, it's beginning to affect your health negatively, you are saying that you've been poisoned.
Okay.
And then it affects you in so many ways.
So when one gets poisoned by lead, what are some of the
signs
and effects?
So it's one of the first signs is especially for children is delayed growth.
Delayed growth.
Delayed growth and delayed development. But because you said, you rightly said it's a neurotoxin, any part that the nervous system affects is affected. So it affects your brain, it affects your kidney, it affects your heart, it affects your digestive system. And it can become, one area which is so critical is that especially for children, some children are truant in school. You think that they are not smart. Because the lead affects their IQ, they are unable to understand what is being taught correctly.
I see.
And naturally, they lose interest in school. And actually, lead also makes you very irritative. So you easily become, things irritate you easily.
Wow.
And so he comes to school, or not, they don't understand what you're teaching, and you also try to, then they get angry, so they will become truant. And so it has a far-reaching impact on our economy.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what are some of the regulatory measures we've put in place? I'm talking safety standards regarding lead, because until you mentioned these, most of us never knew. How are you protecting us, EPA?
So for EPA, we would have to start from the top, where areas where we are likely to get exposure. I mentioned first with regard to the recycling of the used lead-acid batteries. As you know, every activity is supposed to get an environmental permit. And so once you have established a recycling facility, you get an environmental permit, and you're supposed to put in measures to ensure that the environment and human health doesn't suffer from your activity. So that's one. We have developed a guideline that helps the recyclers to be able to manage this product right from the time of picking the batteries to developing the legging rod such that they are not exposed. That is for the recycled batteries. With regard to paint, which I mentioned is also another source of lead. Paint previously was produced with lead compounds. Now we have banned the use of lead compounds in paint and have developed a standard. The previous standard was 600 parts per million. Now, locally in Ghana, it is illegal to produce paint with lead level beyond 90 ppm. The 90 ppm is not, what it means is that you cannot use a lead compound in your product at all, your paint at all. So the 90 ppm will be perhaps from the, as a contaminant in the environment. So it's lead compounds in paint has been banned.
Okay.
And the next one is to raise awareness.
Okay.
To raise awareness to the general public so that children should be prevented from eating peeling paint and all that. When they go, it could be in the soil. So when they go out and play, they should come wash their hands before they eat and all that. Yes.
Interesting. So strategies individuals and communities can adopt to reduce lead exposure. Throw some more light on this one for me.
Yes, so we advise parents to prevent their children from going to places that have been contaminated with lead. For example, places that have been used for a dumping site or was used previously for a dumping site, because normally, because the lead has a very low melting point, whenever something is bent, the lead is likely to be released into the soil. So when the children go there, they are likely to pick it up.
Right.
And then we also advise that you don't allow grazing animals to go to dumping sites to feed, because when they get there, they pick up these smaller particles of lead, and then those things are kept into their body. Then when we eat the meat, yes, and then when the soil is also contaminated, the lead is able to be washed by runoff water into nearby surface water bodies. It can also percolate into groundwater. So when it moves into surface water bodies, it means that vegetable farmers are likely to use it for irrigation. Yes, so we also advise that vegetable farmers should not use water just from the gutter to irrigate.
Wow. Yes. It appears that we all have some work to do to reduce our exposure to lead. So what's your final call to action to all of us?
My call to action is that we should be each other's keeper, especially with the children, as I mentioned. They are very close to my heart. So we should try as much as possible to prevent our children from being exposed to lead from the areas we've mentioned, especially when you're going to buy paint. Make sure that you find out whether the paint contains lead or not, and buy non-leaded paint. Very, very important.
Thank you very much for this public education. It's been eye-opening. Grateful that you passed through. Lovelace Sapong is Deputy Director, Environmental Protection Agency, EPA. And then Peter Dinko is a tutor at the Accra School of Hygiene. He's a water and environment engineer. Gentlemen, thank you for passing through.
Thank you, Caleb.
Excellent.